to make sure I ask the actual question of the session. Is atheism winning the battle for science? Do you have anything to say on that?
You know, I think there are some very prominent very prominent scientists who are atheists who get to be the spokespeople for a lot of what science has to say. And you know, that's why I think this popular debate plays out as, you know, science and Christianity and they're opposed to one another. I think because we've allowed that to be the way the discussion has happened. But if you ask the question, do the discoveries we find in studying the universe, and I'll kind of restrict myself to physics and cosmology, do those discoveries point towards an atheistic worldview, or do those discoveries point towards a theistic Christian worldview? I would say that when you look at the major discoveries over the last 100 years, those almost uniformly say those fit far more comfortably in a Christian worldview than they do in an atheistic worldview. And so, you know, at least on that sort of measure, no, atheism is not winning the battle. That doesn't mean you can't be an atheist and be a good scientist, but when you look at what the data points to, it really does point to Christianity. I think strongly it points to Christianity.
I think that's very well said, Jeff. I think that contemporary physics is more open to a creator and designer of the universe than it has been in any recent memory. When you think of physics at the end of the 19th century, for example, it was thought to be a closed science almost. Yeah. And then came relativity theory, then came quantum theory, and just upended the classical view of physics. And that old worldview, which operated like a kind of machine independent of God and excluded God, is gone. And I think now scientists are very open to metaphysical realities, like a creator and designer of the universe, not to speak of a ground for moral values and ethics, for example, and then history as well, with the advance of New Testament studies and the historical Jesus. So if there is a battle for science that is being won by secularism, that would only be in pop culture. In popular culture, you have to say the Dawkins and the Krauses and others, they get a lot of popular press in the media. They really do seem to, in some ways, be winning the media war. But that isn't what's really happening in the academy. And I have great confidence that in time this is going to straighten itself out. One of the great things I appreciate about science is that it's self-correcting. When it goes off the track, when it veers off the track, eventually it comes back online because it has to deal with a recalcitrant reality out there that is the way it is, regardless of how we think of it. And so science has this wonderful self-correcting nature to it. And so I'm very optimistic about where the future direction lies.
I would kind of say in with that, one of the things that I find interesting is, you know, eventually it gets around there. That eventually may be much longer than I like it. You know, it may be tens of years to hundreds of years. But, you know, I think one of the strongest pieces of evidence in support of a Christian worldview from a scientific perspective is that our universe began to exist. And you look at the history of what's gone on over the last 100 years, and that idea was fought vigorously in the scientific community, and in part because the scientists look for so many ways to get around the beginning. It is one of the better established facts in science. You know, so it's that investigation, that testability, these ideas that are playing out there that ultimately have produced what I would argue one of the strongest apologetic arguments we have for the Christian faith. And so that interplay is, I found that remarkable that that's happened over the last 100 years. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think you can say atheism is winning.